Hey, what up guys, Fallout here, and today's video is brought to you by Naraka Bladepoint, which is going free to play on July 14th on PS5, Xbox Series XS and One, Steam, and Epic Games. If you want to jump in and start clapping cheeks right away, here are 9 tips and tricks I've put together so you can immediately play better. Number 1, always pick the best spawn locations. Before the match begins, you can choose where you want to spawn in, and so can your teammates if you're running in a squad. The game will flat out tell you where the better loot locations are, so pick a big one and drop in as a group. The game will also tell you if your enemies plan to drop in where you're dropping in, but don't let that freak you out and change drop locations. Worst case scenario, you lose early, you wasted what, 1 minute of your life and you can just re-queue. Best case scenario though, you wipe an entire team early and get dank loot in the process. So don't be a little bish fraidy cat, drop in where the loot is good with your team. Tip number 2, tab, don't E. When you spank another player's hiney in front of everybody, don't loot the body by hitting the E key or whatever the button is on console. Instead, hit tab, or again, whatever the button is on console, to bring up your entire inventory. That way, when you're looting, you can see everything the dead guy had on the left and all of your gear on the right. Much more clean and organized that way. And while looting, be sure to strafe a little bit or at least crouch spam here and there while you loot and decide what to take. That way, if another player is aiming at you from downtown with a ranged weapon, you won't get completely embarrassed by taking a free arrow to the face. Make them work for it. Tip number 3, be a bully. Even though ranged combat in Naraka is a thing, more on that later, the majority of combat happens up close. And because that is the case, I highly recommend rolling around with your buddies in a big bully bunch. Find an enemy player peacefully looting alone, collapse on them immediately, and shove them into a locker. Dishonorable? Maybe. But with multiple players bashing and slashing some poor guy all by himself, you'll have a great shot at putting them down with little effort and making life harder for the other team. Are there 2 teams dueling it out within your line of sight? Whip out a ranged weapon and start harassing. Whittle both teams down a wee bit and then swoop in when the combat is over and clean them up while they're weak. If you're ever thinking about what to do at any given moment in Naraka, just think of whatever your favorite Disney movie bully would do and then do that. Tip number 4, upgrade your bags immediately. By killing players and looting in general, you can collect Dark Tide coins. These should be spent immediately at any nearby rift dealer you find. Your priority should be upgrading either your Soul Jade bag or your item bag. My immediate preference right now is probably the Soul Jade bag. If you don't know, Soul Jades are items that you carry with you in a bag at all times. You never actually actively use them, they just give passive benefits to you as a player. Things like better health, better melee damage reduction, better ranged damage reduction, and so on. By spending those Dark Tide coins to get a bigger Soul Jade bag, you can carry more Soul Jades and therefore have more passive benefits, which is great. When you can next afford it, go ahead and upgrade your item bag for the same reason, being able to pick up and have more key items, which are very helpful in combat. And on that note, tip number 5, hoard grappling hooks. Everything in your item bag is going to help you out, but if you want my opinion, and you probably do, otherwise why are you here? Grappling hooks are freaking OP. You can use them to get away from enemies, you can use them to get the high ground or get to a better position on the map. You can even use them in combat to fly right at your enemy, and the lock-on effect you can use to grapple hook at the enemy is really forgiving. If you see that your teammate is 1v1ing an enemy, grapple lock on to the bad guy, fly into the fight, and turn it into an immediate 2v1. Again, all the other items are great and you'll need them for sure, but grappling hooks are the best item by far. Prioritize them in your item bag early on. Tip number 6, learn what beats what. It's a very basic tip, but an important one. In Naraka, there are normal attacks, focus attacks, and counter attacks, also known as parrying. Focus attacks are charge-up attacks, and they are countered by parrying. Parrying is beaten by normal attacking, and normal attacking is beaten by focus attacks. It is crucial that you learn this so you can start styling on people and making them feel really bad if you happen to wind up in a 1v1. And remember, it's never as simple as see what they're doing so you can counter their attack with the right option like rock, paper, scissors. You can dodge or even fake enemies out. For example, you can start a focused attack by charging up, then dodge to cancel the attack, possibly baiting out a parry, and then you just tear them a new one. But either way, learn the fundamentals of what beats what. Tip number 7, don't be afraid to heal in combat. Refreshing your armor and health in Naraka is obviously very important. However, because of how hectic combat can be and how quickly it takes to patch up, up, you really shouldn't be too scared to do it on the fly, even in the middle of combat. I've had plenty of opportunities to do just that. Don't get me wrong, I want to help my teammate win that 1v1, and I'm gonna leap in to gang up on the other guy. But if I'm really banged up and my teammate is looking daisy fresh, it's totally fine to quickly patch up before diving back into the fray. I mean, don't try to take too long, just make it a quick pit stop to improve your odds at winning the current brawl. Tip number 8, chip with range, don't rely on it completely. Even though Naraka is heavily melee based, there are ranged weapons in the game and they're really fun to use. But I only use ranged weapons for chip damage, aka taking quick shots here and there to either get the enemy a little bit weaker or to just harass them again before getting up close to turn them into shish kebab. Basically, if an enemy is approaching me and I have time to pull off a quick shot, or if there are two different teams fighting each other, I'll take a minute to whip out a gun or bow and really tick them off and whittle them down. Then when they turn their attention to me, or when the time is right, I go up close and slice them a new booty hole. And tip number 9, pick up extra weapons always. Look, I get it. You're thinking, hey man, I got 2 of my favorite weapons early on. What the hell do I need any other weapons for? Well, believe it or not, there are attacks in the game that can completely disarm you and yeet your beautiful weapon right out of your hands. And when that happens, you're going to be in a pretty rough situation if you don't have a backup weapon. I would highly advise making all your backup weapons melee weapons. Ain't nobody gonna shed a tear if you get your rifle or bow knocked out of your hand, because that only happens up close anyway. 100% expect that it will happen at least once per game, and if it doesn't, hey, you had nothing to worry about anyway. Better to be prepared than to be panicked. If you're a 5-star max power weeb with any additional tips that you would like to share with your fellow gamer, let me know what they are down in the comment section. Again, big thank you to Naraka Bladepoint. If you're looking for a unique melee-focused battle royale with a wide collection of melee weapons, each of them with a dynamic moveset for you to figure out and master, you gotta check it out. Unlike some no-brainer shootout BRs out there, the game's counter system gives a ton of depth and complexity to the game in a way I really enjoyed. Remember boys, master that counter system and predict the hell out of your opponent. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.